Gothic 2 is one of my favorite games ever since childhood. I play so many games throughout the years, but for some reason my mind keeps coming back to this little guy like an old book that stays with you throughout your life. Today, we delve into Gothic 2 and try to figure out exactly what made it such an amazing game for its time, despite its flaws and mechanical shortcomings, and we wonder why more games like it are made today. Gothic 2 is an action-oriented RPG developed by Pyranha Bytes, and it was released in November in 2002. It's one of the most enduring RPGs that engendered a strong gamer community that to this day, 20 years later, still puts out mods, patches, art, and fan stories. It was released to moderate success in the United States, but its real legacy and popularity was in Europe. Players loved it, and a vocal group of fans wanted more difficulty in Gothic 2, and thus Piranha Bytes started working on an expansion and released it in less than a year, in August 2003. This expansion, called Night of the Raven, almost doubled the content of the original game, adding new quests, a new map, new skills, mechanics, characters, but also reworked skill progression and increased the overall difficulty of the game. Now, it's important to note that this release was in German only, and the official English version was released 2 years later, namely in 2005, as part of the Gothic 2 Gold version. Now, Gothic 2 is a direct sequel to Gothic 1 both in terms of gameplay and story. The game quite literally picks up where you left off in Gothic 1, but it also accounts for the possibility of you never having played the first game. Thus the intro and the first few characters you meet can give you a refresher on the storyline. If you want a synopsis on the story in Gothic 1, feel free to watch my Gothic 1 review or just browse any summary for the game so you know what I'm talking about in this review. And without further ado, let's jump into the story.
A single prisoner altered the fate of hundreds, but he paid a high price for it. Defeated the sleeper, destroyed the barrier. But while all the other prisoners escaped, he remained behind in the rubble. It was I who dispatched him against the sleeper. Now it is I who brings him back from there. He is weak and has forgotten much. But he is alive. He's back. After the fall of the barrier and the banishment of the sleeper, Beliar's wrath has grown even greater. A mighty artifact, so it is written in the old scriptures, will be brought back to this world when the god of darkness sends his henchmen out to search. This search has long since begun. Beliar's henchmen are desecrating the oldest shrines of the gods. The guardians of these holy places have awakened, and their wrath makes the earth tremble. Every powerful magician on this island could sense this wrath. And some of them have certainly begun to face the threat. There you are again. I never thought the two of us would meet again.
I feel like I spent 3 weeks lying under a load of rocks.
The smell of old books is mixed with incense, burning firewood, tallow, and a hint of sulfur in the air. We feel a shiver down our spine, as if our skin is instantly flayed from our bodies. The hair on our arms stand on end, as we feel residual magic lingering in the air. Is it because our all armor has been shattered? Is it due to a teleportation spell? Or did the fight with an archdemon leave a mark on us? We get our bearings, and our eyes come into focus, and Xardas stares at us with a worried look on his face. As we now learn, the only reason we have been kept alive between the end of the first game and now is due to the magical armor we had equipped. Xardas took his time rescuing us, first making sure he built himself a nice cozy tower, which by the way can be seen from the other end of Korinis.
Sounds quite obvious.
Yep. Equipped with bookshelves, a working fireplace, alchemical equipment, a nice comfy bed, and all the amenities a blind necromancer could want. What a guy, right? Surely this individual only has altruistic motives and no ulterior agenda for tasking us to fight dragons, bandits, and ancient evils, right? After talking to him, we help ourselves to everything that's not nailed down and we set off to explore our nearby surroundings. This is one of the game's teaching moments, aka grab everything that's not nailed down. I am not even kidding. The beginning of the game is harsh and you'll need every little knick-knack you can find just to survive. Grab every junk item you can find just to sell, every herb or fruit to eat, every rusty sword you can find. Gothic has a brutal economy at the start, and you'll find a lot of money sinks right off the bat. Now, if you're playing Gothic Knight of the Raven for the first time as your first Gothic game, be forewarned. The difficulty curve is quite steep, and there is no tutorial. I highly recommend you watch a few videos on how combat works, how skills work in general, and how the mobs act. Now, the design philosophy of Gothic 2 Knight of the Raven is basically a hardcore game. It doesn't hold your hand, doesn't care how weak you are, it will always find ways to kill you. Add to that some janky animations and weird combat and you'll have a tough time in the beginning. Now, that being said, the starting area features a couple of old friends from Gothic 1 that gives us a summary of what's been happening for the last couple of weeks. Seems that destroying the barrier freed not only a lot of innocent people, but pretty much all of the prisoners of the realm, which are now causing havoc on the island. Trade is effectively shut down, half of the farmers are in open revolt against the city and the king, no more ships are coming into the port, and the only boat that has recently docked is a galleon filled with paladins that are on a secret mission for the king. Orcish scouts have been spotted near the town, citizens are going missing and are suspected of being kidnapped, thieves are running amok in the town, martial law has been declared, food and good prices are skyrocketing, dragons have come, and orcs have been summoned by an ancient demon, and worst of all, nobody knows about our accomplishments from our time in the colony except old man Xardas, and he is not likely to be singing any of our praises anytime soon. Everybody will treat us as a vagabond, a former convict, or a weakling. People will try to con us, kill us, will be wary of us, and earning everybody's trust will be difficult. I love the story so far. Seriously, I love the idea that our character is basically just a hero by chance, that his motivations are mainly to get the hell out of Dodge, and to do that he has to get well geared again, find a powerful artifact, to defeat the dragons, and survive in the meantime. Now that being said, I am not a fan of the idea of the Chosen One. Gothic 2 sadly takes this approach and treats us as the favorite of Innos, the almighty god of light, fire, and justice. I would much rather have a character that has realistic, selfish motivations to fight dragons, like the need to just survive, or he wants gold, or he wants glory, or as Xardas puts it, if we flee now, it's only to face the dragons later. Now, we just have enough resources at our disposal to pull this off. Gothic 2 kinda contradicts itself in its design in the sense that we are given to act as any kind of selfish individual we want, while at the same time our destiny is to kill dragons, save the island, and defeat an ancient evil or two. You can be a murder hobo and a hero at the same time. It's a lot of moral gray area in the mix, and at least one character in the game, namely Vatras, reacts to your actions if you kill too many innocents. This is basically the premise of Gothic 2. Now, from this point on, how you engage in quests, whether you will be a selfish prick taking advantage of everything and everybody, or you will be a goody two-shoes, now that's entirely up to you. You can always take a more neutral approach and choose the path of the mercenary, where you just fulfill contracts for a purse. Now, from here on out, we make our way to the harbor city of Carinus, which is the only city on the island, also named, well, Carinus. As we exit the tower, we're greeted by a tranquil image of a grazing sheep near a waterfall, and commend Zardex for his excellent choice of real estate. Part of me wonders if I can buy out his tower later on. Hi, sheep. We encounter Lester, an old buddy of ours from Gothic 1, and he gives us some nice tips on how to enter the city. Seems that the banishment of the archdemon the old swamp camp worshipped made them all a bit crazy. Or maybe it was the swampweed, or a combination of both. From then on, we run into Cavalorn, who offers to gear us with a nice knife and a Crocodile Dundee reference.
Knife. Will that do for now?
You call that a knife?
Cavalorn used to be a merchant back in Gothic 1 that we often visited to buy arrows from, and interestingly enough, he also references that as well.
Wait a moment. I know you. You're the fellow who was constantly baking arrows for me in the Valley of Mines.
Now, before we engage, we have a chat with one of the bandits who's trying to lure us into a trap. A bit of smooth talking, and we reveal we are also a convict just like him, and he wants to warn us that his buddies are looking for us. Seems somebody has been spreading around wanted posters with our face on them. This is kind of weird. We were rescued by Zardas, 5 minutes ago? So who's posting a wanted note about us? Was the convict from the previous game? This doesn't really make any sense. Nobody knows we're alive except Zardas, right? Maybe the old man has been telling tales. I wouldn't be surprised. Moving on. Cavalorn was ambushed by some bandits, so we help him get some payback. Here we learn one important lesson. Other NPCs will beat the crap out of us, so we let Cavalorn do the heavy lifting. Now, the first social hub we encounter is a small farm called Lobart's Farm. Here we find out the guards have imposed martial law in the city, so we cannot enter the city just yet if we look like an escaped convict. To this end, Lobart offers us to sell us some farmer clothes, so we look the part of an honest guy. Issue is, we don't really have a lot of gold, so we take up some work for Lobart to give us a discount on the clothes. Here we learn one of Gothic's 2 main design points, and that is, most people don't trust us, and they will only give us tasks that are realistically based on their needs, not ours. Lobart does not trust us, and he directly asks us if we know anything about farmer's work. We don't. So the closest thing to a job is pulling turnips for him. That's right. 10 minutes ago, Zardas rescued us from an archdemon's temple we had just banished to an entirely different dimension while we were decked in the best armor and gear the colony had to offer. We were on top of the world, we killed Gomez, the most powerful man in the colony, we defeated undead, demons, orcs, mythical creatures, powerful mages, and you know what? Pulling turnips is kind of awesome. The lesson here is quite simple, and Gothic 2 does a beautiful job at reinforcing it. If you want something in Gothic 2, you have to earn it. Nobody cares you are the biggest, baddest spell slinger a few days ago, you don't have anything to show for it. After pulling turnips, we help out Lobart's wife to buy a frying pan, we get some wine for the farmers, and we inform another farmer called Malik that we cleared out the bandit hideout with Cavalorn. We buy the farmer's clothes, thinking we're ready to head into town, but wait! We run into a shifty character called Greg, which does a decent pirate accent, and needs our help to enter Carinus. The only way to actually give him a hand is for him to pass as a farmer himself, so we give the clothes we just worked for to him. We help him out in the hopes that he's going to give us his pirate hat in the future. Before we enter the city, we run into another dubious character called Cantor. He offers us to give us a pass in exchange for a friendly favor we'll offer him in the future. Here's the thing in Gothic. Actions have consequences, and usually you don't really meet genuine friendly people. It's a good teaching moment for the future. We try to get into the city, but the guards aren't buying our story.
What is it?
You aren't getting in here, my boy.
Why not?
Looking the way you do, you're sure to cause nothing but trouble here, boy.
Here is where we enjoy Gothic secrets design. Gothic 2 has way more secrets than its predecessor, and the game accounts for you pulling off unlikely choices. As such, we skew going in through the front gate as a common peasant, and we opt in to simply climb the walls, and thus we go into the heart of the city. Using this method, we can actually run straight to our buddy Lars from Gothic 1, who is gonna reward us with 500 experience points for not using the front door.
I must be crazy. What are you doing here? Did you swim here?
I love this game already, man. The harbor town of Kyrinus is where we'll spend a good chunk in Chapter 1, learning who the major players and factions are in the city, gaining influence, but also information to help us in our major quest of attaining the Eye of Innos. The first impressions we get of the city is that it's a pretty realistic place. We have shops, a militia patrol around the city, wide roads lit by oil lamps, park benches, storage areas, a barracks for the local militia, a temple, docks, warehouses, the rich quarter pubs, a brothel. Pyranha Bytes didn't shy away from trying to make the harbor town down to earth, but as we begin to find out, this city has seen better days. And though it was once one of the grandest cities in the realm, the lack of trade and the collapse of the barrier has left the city in a state of decay, unrest, and uncertainty. Unemployment, theft, and fear is on the rise, and no ships have come in for weeks except a galleon belonging to the Paladins, who recently landed in the city on a secret mission. From the get-go, an arrogant Paladin pretty much tells us the only way we're getting close to Lord Hagen, the ad hoc leader of the city, is filled with steps to first become a citizen and then becoming a major guild member just to be allowed to see him. Thing is, this actually makes sense from a story perspective. The city is under martial law. All strangers are considered suspicious, and the guards will see us as either being a thief, a spy, or a saboteur in light of the fact that a significant number of the town's inhabitants have gone missing, presumably kidnapped. Night of the Raven also teaches us that we're incredibly weak in the beginning. This lesson is specifically reinforced everywhere you go, including Kyrinus. Seriously, don't pick fights early on unless you can't avoid them. It's a city that is essentially divided into 4 main parts. You got the Craftsman's Quarter, which is exactly where we first entered Kyrinus. Here the elders and craftsmen of the city plied their trades from carpentry to blacksmithing, hunting, and alchemy. The second major quarter is the marketplace, which is exactly what you think it is. Tradesmen and merchants hawk their wares amid soaring prices, but they get to spend the night for free at a hotel. The third quarter is the docks, which are basically the slums of Kyrinus. This place doesn't even have a regular patrol of guards, so fights, thievery, and danger run amok here. The last quarter is the upper quarter, where the posh nobility have their homes. We cannot even get in if we're not a citizen of Kyrinus, thus our first goal is to become a citizen. To do that, we need to become an apprentice. We have 3 choices basically, despite being 5 masters. We either become an apprentice to Harad the blacksmith, Constantino the alchemist, or Bospor the bowyer. This major choice pretty much just affects what you want to sell and craft in the long run to your master. If you choose Harad, he'll buy whatever swords you make for full price. He's a good choice, by the way. As well as Bospor, who will buy any skins and pelts you harvest while hunting. Constantino is objectively the worst choice in the game, since he'll only buy mushrooms you find in the wild, and the game doesn't tell you this, but if eating 50 small mushrooms permanently increases your mana, very useful if you want to go the path of the paladin or the mage. Basically, avoid Constantino, he's the worst choice of them all.
Healing.
Why? Are you injured?
Yes.
Yes.
Go to Vatras then. He'll patch you up all right. And stop bleeding over my floor, please.
My choice was to go with Bospor because he pays full price for furs, and we get plenty of those from killing beasties. Now, another cool thing Gothic teaches you is that you have several ways to complete a quest. Take for example the quest to gain Harad's approval to become an apprentice. He wants an orc weapon. He doesn't specifically tell you to go kill an orc. He just assumes that you've killed one at the end. You actually have several ways to get an orc weapon. Walking around the town, you can hear rumors of an orc scout that has been seen near the city. You can attempt to kill that orc yourself, but you're probably too low level to survive the encounter. Another option is to pay a guy called Bartok to hunt with you, and he's going to help you kill that orc, although he might get some minor permanent trauma from it.
An orc, right outside the city. Holy shit.
And thus you can get an orc weapon. Another option is to go to a cave northwest of Kyrinus and find a discarded orc weapon in it. A last alternative is to just go to the mercenaries farm and buy an orc weapon from a guy there. See, the developers understood that the best way to make the players believe they're playing in a responsive world is to give them options but also rewarding them for being attentive. Most dialogues in the game actually drop clues or obvious hints about your possibilities. Gothic 2's game design works a lot like that for most NPCs in the game. The city of Pyranha is meant as a social hub for you to gather information, complete low-level quests so you can get stronger, find allies, and gear up properly before you can head out into the dangerous island. One thing I love is that pretty much all NPCs in the game only give you quests that make sense in the context of that character's story. Here's a few examples. Alwyn the Butcher wants you to beat up his neighbor that keeps hammering his roof all day and night and keeps him up awake. Ignaz, the crazy alchemist, wants you to do an experiment for him. Forben the carpenter is a pious man and wants you to get the blessing of a priest. Matteo, a greedy merchant, wants you to get some of his gold back from a debtor. None of these quests really bespeak that you are a chosen hero or anything like that. In fact, morally speaking, you are either a bad guy in some quest or simply a hired sword. These are simply tasks that people want you to do considering their own needs. Now, we get the lay of the land in Pyranha, and we meet some colorful characters along the way, such as Darren.
You will probably want to donate gold to the Holy Church of Innos, won't you?
The creme de la creme of the militia.
Go home and let us do our work. We're watching over the town and its citizens. Oh.
A tobacco merchant who gives us foreshadowing if we pay him.
Want?
For a paltry 25 coins. I shall risk a glance through time for you.
And eventually we become a citizen and see what's the hubbub with the upper quarter of the city. Here the social elite, the rich and powerful, have their mansions. There are a few things of interest up here. We meet the judge, which is exactly the same character from Gothic 1 that sentenced us to the colony. He's about as arrogant as they come, and he sort of recognizes us.
Say, don't I know you from somewhere?
We try to get to Lord Hagen, but his guards stop us since we do not actually belong to any guild.
Need to speak to Lord Hagen.
Do you know how often I've heard that? You can't go in. If you try anyway, I'll have to kill you.
Paladins are a cheerful bunch, aren't they? They're totally not giving us a lot of red flags to join them. Now, the upper quarter is also a very nice place to rob. Eventually, we reach Vatras, the main guy in Pyranha who is going to help us advance our two main quests. He is a sly old fox that can tell when we're lying through our teeth.
Good. Let us summarize. You are an adventurer from down south who heard rumors that terrible things are going to happen, and you have come to report this to the Paladins.
I think there's something you're not telling me.
And we find out he belongs to a secret organization called the Ring of Water, a mysterious group operating in the shadows, tasked with the purpose of preserving the balance between the gods. Vatras gives us 3 important tasks. Find out what happened to the missing citizens of Pyranha, find out who is supplying the bandits outside of town with weapons, and the last task is to deliver the message to Lord Hagen, namely the one that dragons have entered the scene. In addition to that, Vatras is going to test us to see if he can actually trust us to deliver a message to the other water mages on the island. The water mages won't be too happy to see us from the events of the previous game, where we quite literally drained all the years of work they put in to escape the barrier by collecting a huge ore mound for magical purposes. We start by going to Lars, our old rogue friend, who seems to be in the Ring of Water, and he will escort us to the water mages. He also gives us his ring so we can use it to identify other Ring of Water members. At this point, we can begin exploring around the city, and our first pit stop is Archol's farm. Here, we find the farmers being squeezed by some mercenary pricks, and we help the farmers deal with them, earning Archol's gratitude. He tells us that further down the road, some bandits have made camp to ambush any travelers or caravans along the way. We reach the ruins in the northeastern part of Pyranha with the help of Lars, and our blue friends are surprised to see us, and we nearly killed Satyrus by giving him apoplexy.
But say, don't I know you? Of course, you bastard. Don't think that I could have forgotten how you betrayed us in the new camp.
In the last game, we kind of literally drained the entire cumulative work of the water mages in a single moment to charge a sword capable of killing the Sleeper, the big baddie from Gothic 1. Seems the water mages have been busy since their escape from the barrier, excavating some ancient ruins that seem to be a mishmash of cultures. The ruins seem to be a cocktail of Aztec and Mayan cultures, while the script we read on the wall is based on Scandinavian runes of the Futhark alphabet. This is what happens when you tell the intern to design an ancient culture. The water mages are currently busy with finding out how to open a stone portal, and to this end we get tasked with finding our pieces of a magical key. seems we go on another artifact hunt for the water mages just like Gothic 1. We also get introduced to some teleporter stones on the island so we can get around slightly faster. Another mechanic we learn here is that one of the water mages can teach us how to read these mysterious stone tablets we've been picking up. These stone tablets permanently increase our stats, so I highly recommend to invest learning points into them. Until then, you can use them as paperweights. Back in Pyranha, we begin tracking down the missing citizens. Asking around at the docks, a couple of people point us to a beach north of the city, where we'll find our answers. We want to be exceptionally diligent in our investigations, so we ask everybody, and I do mean everyone. That's why we go to the brothel. Surely the ladies there have a few tales to share.
Now, what about the two of us, sweetie? You paid for it after all. Wouldn't you like to have a little fun before you leave?
Yeah, I'll skip that scene because YouTube censorship and whatnot. You know how it is. Back to the story. We eventually reach a cove where a lone pirate by the name of Skip asks us if we can do a deal for him to sell some rum. We accept, then he hands us some information about the missing citizens. Seems the bandits have been kidnapping them and they have a base near Onar's farm. The pirate highlights their hideout on our map, so we're gonna pay them a visit eventually. We ask Lars to hold our hand as we recover another artifact for the water mages. We head on to the tavern called the Dead Harpy. The ring Lars gave us allows us to recognize the tavern owner as part of the ring, and he gives us a free room as a result. A local barfly called Rakar gives us a quest to find a competitor in a drinking contest. This is one of those cute quests where we find out that Rakar laces the beer of his competition with gin, so he wins every time. As such, we sneak in, open his chest, replace his gin with water, and we sponsor a farmer called Randolph to compete for us. We stake 100 gold coins, and 2 days later Randolph wins. We also get to make fun of Rakar as a bonus. It's quests like these that really make up the game. Seemingly normal activities that make the world feel alive. No world in danger, no dragons suddenly torching the place, just people going about their lives making bets on who can drink the most.
Mess you got me into. Now I can play lookout for Rookar again.
Here we also meet Greg again, in his farmer's clothes, down on his luck, trying to find his treasure caches. We help him out, clear out the goblin cave, and we dig up his stash. With this little quest, the game introduces a new mechanic to us. We can dig up treasures from marked spots on the map. Most of them have loot you can sell later on, but some have valuable stuff like stone tablets. Now, at this point in the game, we feel fairly confident to explore the map a bit. We've leveled up, so we clear the island of low-level mobs. We do the only thing we can do at this point in the game, which is to punch things with our sword. Yeah, archery is a viable alternative if you want to go that route, but you have to pump a lot of points into dexterity and archery at the same time to be a good alternative. Now, going the sword route has an interesting observation. Most mobs stagger when you hit them, with a few minor exceptions in the game. Meaning, if you time your hits right, you should be able to handle even high-level mobs at a low level. I like this game design because it rewards you learning the patterns of attack, timing, coordination, and reflexes. You know, exactly the same things that make games like Elden Ring, Dark Souls, or Bloodborne so lovable. It rewards player skill as opposed to just pumping numbers up in order to defeat certain opponents. You can even tackle trolls at level 1 if you really want to cheese them a bit. We head back on to the city to finish a few quests and learn that there's this Thieves Guild operating in town. To join them, we basically need to have interactions with free NPCs. One of them is a thief we can choose to let go, and it's the smart route since he rewards you with a permanent dexterity increase. Another is a fence, which can sell you some interesting stuff, and the third is a murderer. Now, the third guy we decide to turn in because we just want to be a thief, not an assassin. By doing that, the Thieves Guild sends an assassin after us. We deal with him and get a key to the sewers of Pyranha and meet the leader of the Thieves Guild, a menacing woman called Kasha. She gives us a minor task to steal a ring from the alchemist, and thus we become a member. Key note here is that you can join certain minor guilds without affecting your primary guild. For example, you can be a member of the militia and a member of the Ring of Water and the Thieves Guild. Kinda like being a cop while having ties to the mafia. Coming from a post-communist country, this hits a bit too close to home. But then again, Pyranha Bytes also came from a post-communist country, so they knew how to hit the right chords of realism. Once we're a fully fledged thief, we find out the guild operates right under the hotel, and the manager knows about our activities. As long as we don't draw attention to the hotel, she's cool with us. We also get to learn pickpocketing, which is a pretty cool skill in the game that can significantly boost both your pockets, but also grant ever-increasing experience points each time we rob somebody. In Gothic 2, crime does pay. Quite well. Speaking of payment, Next, we set off to do some quests for the mercenaries. Seems the biggest landowner of the island has decided to hire mercenaries because he's tired of having the city militia plunder his goods and grain for a war that's already lost. I love how the game pretty much describes the political situation in the kingdom from the eyes of farmers and merchants. You can pretty much feel where the war is going by things like this.
Now listen up. I inherited this farm and this land from my father, and he inherited it from his father. I'm not going to allow that greedy imbecile of a king to make off with all that just in order to feed his useless armies. The war with the orcs has been going on forever. And where do we stand? On the edge of defeat.
We meet Buster, one of the mercenaries from Gothic 1. He doesn't recognize us at first, so he challenges us to a fight because he needs to prove just how manly he is. We beat his ass, which lights up a few neurons in his brain, and then he recognizes us from the colony. His tone turns to a friendly one, mostly because of a shared history in prison. People who usually are ex-convicts either tend to stick together or have a lukewarm reaction to us. The mercenaries are the same group as the mercenaries in the previous game. They are a hardcore bunch of professional fighters led by Lee, a former general and war hero of the realm, sentenced to life imprisonment because of some corrupt nobles. He got the blame for the queen's murder, so he used his leadership, logistical prowess, and sheer will to organize a disciplined force of mercenaries under his banner. In the first game, the mercenaries were tasked with protecting the water mages, the magic ore, and the camp. Here they are hired by Onar, the rich fat landowner. Now, I love the Merc Boys the most as a group in the game. They are ironically the most honest of all three factions you can join. See, the militia is mainly corrupt or weak, and the only thing you need to join them is to be a citizen of the town. That's not really a high bar to clear. The monastery of the magicians require a donation of a sheep and 1,000 gold pieces, which pretty much limits their members to the social elite and rich folk. They're also arrogant and annoying overall. The paladins are pretty much cut from the same cloth, or, well, chainmail. The mercenaries, however, you can only join by merit. They do not care if you are rich or poor. They do not care if you are an archer or a fist fighter. The only thing they care about is if you can stand up for yourself, show some spine, and defend yourself. In addition to that, joining them requires a popular vote, and you need to pass a test to prove your mettle. I love this faction because it's a purely meritocratic one. You gotta put your money where your mouth is and let your actions speak for themselves. Buster offers us a friendly warning that when we enter Onar's farm, a mercenary by the name of Sentenza is gonna shake us down for 50 gold pieces. Choice here is simple: pay the gold for Sentenza's vote or try to defeat him in combat. He will not vote for us, but the fact that we beat him in a straight duel will impress the other mercenaries. Half of the boys on the farm will be like that. I also like the fact that they have rules they have to stick by. As Torloff puts it,
what are the rules for a duel?
Quite simple. Both opponents have to have the opportunity to draw their weapons before the first blow. You can't just go and belt one of the men without warning. There has to be some sort of spoken challenge, an insult, or another reason to fight.
As we walk around the farm, we learn that Lee kept the boys together from the colony, made a deal with Onar, and also had a plan to get off the island. Lee's strategy is simple.
But our reward is more than just our pay. By helping the farmers, we cut the city off from its provisions. And the less the paladins have to eat, the sooner they'll listen when I finally make them an offer of peace.
Start the city out so he can force Lord Hagen, the de facto leader of the city, to the negotiation table. That's actually a pretty smart strategy. Lee knows the paladins can't spare men to handle the mercenaries because most of them were sent into the Valley of Mines on a secret mission, and the town only has the local militia as defense, which aren't exactly the cream of the crop when it comes to fighting. We beat up some more mercenaries so we can befriend them, then afterwards we set off to clear the island of Goonies. Now, I'm not going to bother describing the genocide much, but I'll say this: use your gold to buy scrolls. I kid you not. Most magical scrolls in the game are worth the price. Is an encounter with a group of orcs too hard? Just buy a Rain of Fire scroll and enjoy the fireworks. A shadow beast giving you headaches? Buy an ice block scroll, freeze him, then chop into bits. The game throws a lot of tools at your disposal, so you have multiple ways of dealing with any encounter. I love this type of game design, by the way. It rewards patience, being attentive, and gives you a plethora of options on how to put a beat down on anything in your way. Or you can play a reverse Uno card. Too many bandits in a hideout giving you trouble? Transform into a mythical shadow beast or a dragon snapper and eat your fill. The world is your oyster with spell scrolls. Now, Once we're done playing with the mercs, we head on to the hideout of the bandits. It's quite a sizable compound located on a defensible rocky hill nested on the mountain's edge. We find out that the mysterious person who put the bounty on us was Dexter. Wait, Dexter? No, not that one. This guy. He used to be a merchant in the old camp in Gothic 1. He gives us some info dump on who orchestrated the kidnappings, namely Raven, the former ore baron. It's a cute namesake for an expansion, I suppose. It seems Raven gathered all the former convicts he could get from the old camp, and he struck a deal with the pirates to ferry them to an unknown part of the island. To what end? Nobody knows, but in order to find the missing people, we need to get there. When we exhaust all dialogue options with Dexter, Greg the pirate shows up and he helps us make short work of the bandits. We pick up a letter from Dexter's corpse, which proves Raven ordered him to kidnap as many people from across the land. Greg is now dismayed because he has no idea on how to cross the mountain to reach that part of the island where he hails from. We leave the sad pirate behind. No worries, we'll run into him again. With this proof in hand, we head on back to Vatras. He tasks us to assist the mages in opening the portal to that unknown part of Corinus where Raven ran off to. Issue is, we can't finish that task until we get the last ring fragment from them. In order to do that, we need to have a chat with Lord Hagen, and his zealous guards won't let us in unless we belong to a respectable guild. Now, at this point in the game, you can pretty much finish all quests for all guilds, short of actually joining one. Now, for my personal playthrough, I went to the path of the Fire Mage, simply because magic is awesome and I want to set things on fire. That, and we enjoy some other hidden perks as a Fire Mage, such as the ability to bully some paladins, which you'll see later. We show up to the monastery with a statuette we retrieved for Darren the Dollar Mage, and they let us in. Most of our experiences in the monastery are miserable ones. The mages are arrogant, stuck up, and barely even want to talk to us. They saddle us with chores that aren't even related to magic in order to teach us humility. We're not going to be humble, not to these pricks. After we do 100 chores, we're given the key to the library. In the library, we find out we can demand something called the Test of Fire. This test can be demanded by any novice in order to prove himself he's worthy of ascending to wear the fancy robe. This year, 3 novices have been chosen besides us. Ulfgar, a novice from Corinus who seemed a friendly sort, Aegon, an arrogant bloke who is the governor's nephew, and Igaraz, a novice that enjoys blackmailing other novices. We get 3 tests to complete, and they all have a dark undertone. One of the mages on the High Council wants us to destroy a magical golem.
You really should not attempt to take this test. Your spirit is weak. Better to serve in the monastery, and perhaps you will be chosen in a few years.
We can only do that by stealing a holy artifact from the monastery. So, from the get-go, we're being set out to be the bad guy. Another fire mage orders us to obtain a magical runestone by following the path, while the last tells us to use the said runestone to craft a fire arrow spell. We set off towards the tavern and run into Igaraz, who isn't much help. Now, unfortunately, his scripts are broken, and after talking to him, he disappears from the game. We run into the said golem, and one whack of the hammer later, he's a pile of rubble. 1 test completed, 2 more to go. We venture northeast and run into Ulfgar. Seems he has no idea where to go, so he literally tags along everywhere we go. Our destination is a hidden cave in the northeast, short of running into a grumpy black troll. Inside the cave, we run into Aegon, who, lo and behold, gets a paranoia attack, thinking we want to steal his prize. We defeat Aegon, then open the chest and see what's in it. A runestone! 1 minute later, Wolfgar turns his coat on us. Seems he took his cue from Aegon. Here's the amusing part. The game normally assumes we'll travel by foot using the same route we got to here, and the first novice, namely Igaraz, is scripted to ambush us halfway through. His script doesn't work well on the English version of the game, so he doesn't spawn. But this is basically the test of fire. We murder 3 people to complete the quest. We're supposed to become a servant of Innos, the almighty god of fire, justice, light, and compassion. And the initiation test has us murdering our competition. Here's another sinister undertone. When we do deliver the quest to the High Council of Fire, one of them mentions that only one other person has completed the test of fire when he demanded it.
A young, ambitious novice, then. He has long since found his place in the High Council. I speak of Serpentis.
It's Serpentis, the guy who gave us the task of killing the golem, knowingly full well we had to steal a holy relic from the monastery to do so. I mean, even his name is a reference to the snake he is. So, are all the members on the Council of Fire like this? Murdered their own friends years ago? If so, color me impressed, Piranha Bytes. You really crafted a well-written hypocritical cult right here. I mean, seriously, the Fire Mages are probably the worst guild in the game, both morally and mechanically speaking. Morally, they are stuck up, nigh untouchable by anybody, can override the rule of judges, and generally are feared and respected across the land. They are considered the ever-virtuous ordained of Innos, free from sin and beyond reproach. I wonder what that reminds me of.
Left the circle in order to study the black arts. That is a crime for which the fire magicians, the ordained of Innos, the ever-good and virtuous, will accept no excuse. They are certain that I'm still alive, but they have no idea where to find me, and that's a good thing too.
Mechanically speaking, role-playing a mage in Gothic 2 is hard. For one reason mainly, you can only cast a limited amount of spells before you run out of mana. Now, if you gear your character to become a mage from the get-go, you can fire around 5 to 6 fireballs before you're spent. At that point, you have to run to a safe spot, open your inventory, and drink a mana potion. It's not ideal combat, to say the least. Interestingly enough, the game developers accounted for that, and in the ini settings file of the game, you can actually turn on the potion keys keybinds that allow you to drink potions while in combat without opening the inventory. Some consider this a cheat, some consider this the only way to play a mage, but the game developers did implement that option for players, so they were onto something. Now, especially since there are no skills in the game where you can train to regenerate your mana, you can only drink potions, eat food, or sleep to regain mana. So why choose a mage? Well, in my playthrough, I chose it for role-playing reasons, mainly because I want to rob the paladins and fire mages blind, and also because I like magic in Gothic 2. It actually scales pretty fast, and even in the beginning, something as simple as a fireball can help you clear more than half the maps in the game. Now back to the story. Before we go back to Vatras, we want to abuse our newly gained position. We return to the ship of the paladins and demand entry.
What happens if I go aboard?
I shall kill, I mean stop you.
You would attack a fire magician?
I would never lay a hand on a magician.
So, what would you do if I went aboard?
Nothing, sir.
We loot a potion of permanent strength from the cargo hold and then snub the paladins on the way out. Are we the baddies? We are finally a member of a guild, which means we can progress on our main quest. We go back to the upper quarter and demand entry to Lord Hagen and finally meet the head honcho. We find out some interesting tidbits from this conversation. One of the mysteries floating from the rumor mill around the city is, why are the paladins in the city? Are the orcs about to attack? Is an invasion incoming? The reason is actually more simple than that. Since the fall of the barrier, the king stopped receiving his shipment of ore. This had a devastating effect on the war effort, so the king sent Lord Hagen, along with 100 of his best paladins to Corinnes, to secure 200 crates of ore from the Valley of Mines, put the ore back onto the ship, and sell it back to the capital. Lord Hagen sent an expedition to the Valley of Mines, but he lost contact with them. Fun fact, if you actually manually count all the paladins in the game, both living and their graves, you actually amount to 100 paladins. I have no idea if somebody on the dev team did this intentionally or it was just happenstance. Moving on, we make a deal with Lord Hagen. We go into the Valley of Mines, find out what happened to the expedition, get a report, then come back to him. In exchange, we get the Eye of Innos, the fabled artifact Xarda sent us to retrieve in order to fight the dragons. On top of that, we also get Hagen's ring fragment for the water mages. It's at this point we can end chapter 1, probably the longest chapter in the game, and so we enter chapter 2. Here our choices fork into two directions. We can either go back to the Valley of Mines, or we can go to the mysterious part of the island the water mages are trying to get at. We opt for the latter simply because the expansion content is pretty cool and it's also scaled to our level. We go back to Vatras, tell him we delivered the message to Hagen, and he allows us to join the Ring of Water, the covert arm of the water mages. We join our future brethren in a short meeting at Orland's Tavern, and Lars formally dubs us a member of the Ring. We're also given some nice armor as a reward. We go back to Saturus with the last fragment of the ring, and the water mages restore the fragments into a functional magical key. We open the lock, and we get a nice animation of a portal opening up. We feel ready. We're geared. We have potions and scrolls. The water mages are waiting for us to take point. We jump inside and we come out into a similar ruined temple in one piece. Or do we? Something is strange though. It's as if we've been violently shaken around like a kite in a storm. We feel disjointed, as if something has been ripped away from us. Exploring the temple, we come across some strange statues. We know these statues. They are the same guardians that attacked us when we tried to retrieve the ring fragments for the water mages. Seems these stone guardians come alive when we approach them. Coming out of the temple, we're greeted by Satyrus, who somehow managed to get here before us. He's surprised to see us and informs us that the water mages have been here for 2 whole days waiting for us. What? One of the mages speculates that when we entered the portal, we might have taken a detour or two through alternate dimensions before we reached this place. Who knows? We might have hit a solar flare when we step through the gate. Stargate fans will get that reference. Satyrus gives us the lowdown on the area. Seems these ruins belong to an ancient civilization that was destroyed in a flood centuries ago. This place is called Jarkandar. We're gonna spend some time here. There are a few points of interest nearby. Satyrus tells us we need to explore the island and gather clues as to what happened to this place. On top of that, we need to figure out a way to get to Raven, stop him, and politely ask him to free the prisoners. Oh, and there's also this cool pirate camp to the west. Now, before we start, I want to point out the elephant in the room and this supposed mysterious part of the island no one has been to in centuries. I mean, come on. Khorinis is an island. Yeah, sure, Jarkandar is surrounded by mountains, that's true, but at the same time it also has access to the sea. We humans are naturally curious. Are you gonna tell me nobody has sailed across the island and found a rich jungle environment filled with mysterious ruins and treasure waiting to be had? The major plot hole aside, let's go back to the story. We conveniently start off in the center of the map in what seems to have been the heart of the city. A lush environment greets us. The rich smell of the soil is mingled with the fragrance of berries growing prodigiously across the land. Ruins covered in ivy and moss hint that this place was a bustling city center. Right off the bat, we learn the local fauna is a bit chompier than those in Khorinis. Enemies are slightly stronger, but so are we. Now, as a fire mage, we start checking down all of the potions we hoarded and rain indiscriminate fire upon the wildlife. And once we're done flexing our magical muscles, we head on over to the pirates. Here we encounter a friendly face by the name of Alligator Jack. Jack tells us his boss is Captain Greg, who left in search of plunder a few weeks ago. Crocodile Dundee, Jack, offers us to escort us to his camp if we help him do some hunting. Upon reaching the camp, we're greeted by an image of a shoddy palisade and a stuck-up pirate who wants payment so we can enter. We play the nice guy, we pay, and here we learn a few things. The pirates are at war with the bandits. They initially ferried all the bandits and their goods to Jarkandar in exchange for a lot of gold. At one point, the bandits started kidnapping the citizens of Khorinis and began ferrying prisoners for a secret project Raven was working on. One day, the bandits simply stopped paying and declared war on the pirates and their accents. The pirates also have the best booze in the game. The camp is a cheerful enough place, and the lads are interesting to merit a few quests. The current leader of the camp is a lazy bum called Francis, who holds the key to Greg's hut. We ask around a bit and we learn he's the ship's treasurer and suspect of embezzling money from the crew. We dig around a bit more, literally, and find Francis's paybook in a cave. We use it as blackmail, so Francis gives us the key to Greg's hut. In here, we find a few treasures in his plans. Seems Greg wants to sneak in a pirate dressed as a bandit into Raven's camp. He needs a spy to figure out what's going on there. As we exit his hut, Greg shows up and catches us in the act. And he's pissed. Nothing has been done in his absence. The palisade isn't finished, Francis is useless as usual, the canyon is teeming with beasts, nobody has refilled the coffee maker. I had a job like this once, by the way, when the boss went on vacation. When he came back, he blamed the workers and promoted the manager, who was even lazier than us. Go figure. Seems the pirates have a better management style. First thing Greg does is to move Francis to sawing planks and asks us what we've been doing. We're actually straightforward and tell him we've been productive, which seems to make Greg ignore the fact we've looted his entire cabin. Greg tasks us to take command of a pirate troop and clear some beasties in a nearby canyon. This is one of those cool moments in Gothic 2 where we get a few followers to do the killing for us, and we learn why it doesn't happen more often with this game's engine. The pathfinding. Oh, the pathfinding. It's so bad. If you gently go down a hill, the NPCs will fall down a cliff. If you cross water, chances are they will drown. If you eat some bad sushi, it's your followers that will get food poisoning. We get the idea. We clear the canyon, return to Greg, and then we get our reward. And by reward, I mean we get the honor of donning a bandit armor so we can infiltrate their camp without getting attacked on sight. Thanks, Greg. We make our way to the lovely swamp, and we enter a foggy marshland that's teeming with aggressive flora and fauna. The chirps, trills, and chitters of a billion insects barely drown the rumblings of occasional earthquakes that seem to intensify the closer we get to Raven's camp. The bandit camp is basically the answer to the question, what happened to all the NPCs from Gothic 1? Well, here they are. Here we learn that the bandits made their home in this mosquito-infested place because it has a secret gold mine. They stopped paying the pirates for goods, and there is a war brewing between the camps and the bandits in Jarkandar. It's a nice blast from the past to talk to all the characters we met in the first game. But here's another layer we find out later. Raven didn't settle here for the gold. He just gave the bandits an excuse while he was searching for something else. It's here we learn the answers to all of our questions. Why were the bandits kidnapping the citizens of Korinis? Why settle in the middle of a swamp filled with monsters? Why be so confident to betray the pirates when they are your only way out of Jarkandar and your only supply line? The answer lies in what Raven had his slaves dig up. It seems he found an ancient temple to Innos, and through dark magic, he is seeking to enter it and recover a powerful item. This info were given by a bandit smith that also gives us a nice Lovecraft reference.
Tomb, he mumbled, and called some strange words, over and over. Cardamon, Fatang Shatar, Fatang Beliar.
We try to enter the temple after him, but we're stopped by his guards. The guy who holds the key is actually Bloodwyn, a character from Gothic 1 everybody knows about, who introduced us to the concept of protection money. We meet Bloodwyn again, make a few jokes at his expense, and give him what he deserves.
Ah, you miserable dog!
It was very clever of the developers to give us the players catharsis in putting down Bloodwyn for good. We heroically help ourselves to his severed head, present it to the guards, and run in after Raven.
Here. Do you still want to stop me now?
Is that Bloodwyn? Oh, that's yes. No, I mean, you can go in.
But we're too late. Raven sealed the doors behind them, and we have no idea how to enter. We run back to Sachuras and ask him for advice. Sachuras tells us that the only way Raven managed to enter the temple was with the assistance of the ghost of the priest called Cardamon. In order to enter, we need help from our own ghost, so we summon the ancient leader of this fallen civilization and complete a lore puzzle to enlist his aid. I really like this part in the game because it rewards the player if he's paying attention to all the clues that led to the downfall of this ancient culture. We get a magical passphrase, then Sachuras enlightens us with what this entire adventure has been about. Seems Raven is after a mighty artifact called the Claw of Beliar. This artifact is in many ways the opposite of the Eye of Innos, the artifact of the divine god of light and justice. Much as the nameless hero is considered the avatar of Innos, Raven is now blessed by the dark god to be his chosen one. This powerful artifact, as we learn from the various surviving scraps of information, was the downfall of this ancient civilization. It was brought here by Radimes, the son of the warrior caste leader centuries ago, as a trophy won in battle. Soon the claw started to have a similar effect like the One Ring from Lord of the Rings, meaning it manipulated the warrior caste into a civil war. Adanos, god of water and balance, was so distraught about what he had seen that he flooded the entire city, wiping away the very civilization that worshipped him. In an attempt to contain the power of the Claw of Beliar, the survivors erected a temple filled with traps, sealing in Radimes alive, the very warrior that brought the claw to the city of Jarkandar. The remaining survivors sealed the valley and the portal that led to Korinis and broke the key into various pieces. Now, what happened to the survivors? Nobody is actually certain, but there are clues that they probably settled afterwards in the ancient monastery ruins in the Valley of Mines. In Gothic 1, we explore a ruined monastery with Gorn when we search for the focus stones, the very same stones that were used to create the barrier. The places where the mages erected the barrier ritual are identical to the teleportation stones found in Jarkandar. I kinda like this world building, where we're left to speculate about what happened to the survivors of Jarkandar. For my own part, the clues point that they settled into the Valley of Mines, and perhaps for a time they lived there before they left again. The earthquakes were the result of Raven trying to destroy the magical wards of the Temple of Adanos in order to gain access to the Claw. Once inside the temple, all the tablets and lore pieces we gathered are used to bypass the various traps inside it. Interestingly enough, we actually encountered the ghost of Radimes in one of the trapped rooms. Seems he is cursed to endlessly walk the temple he was entombed in. His last words to us are,
"If you have the strength, sink it in the depths of the sea."
I like this moment a lot. For one simple character, it humanizes the destruction wrought by this terrible weapon and makes us wonder if his spirit is kept alive as a punishment from the God of Balance or by the Claw itself. We eventually reach Raven and we're greeted with the typical villain monologue cliché, as well as a disappointing boss fight. At this point in the game, you're either going to have some decent weapon skills or some powerful scrolls to make this fight a joke. The ending cutscene is nice though. Bye bye! I do want to mention that this fight is all the more interesting in the Liver mod. Raven is way stronger, he casts spells and summons creatures to fight for him. We yoink the Claw of Beliar from Raven and pout that we can't loot his cool black armor in the process. Jarkandar is now safe again. The slaves are free, the bandits will be left in the care of Forrest the Temple Gatekeeper, and we get to decide what to do with the Claw of Beliar. If you're a melee fighter, you can use the Claw as a weapon. If you are a mage, you can transform it into various runes, but to be completely honest, the runes are really bad. The last option is to give the sword to Saturus, and he throws it into the sea. This is kind of the funniest option because if you return to Zardes later on and tell him what you did, he has a mini aneurysm about what you just did, which is the equivalent of throwing a live nuke into the Pacific Ocean just to keep it safe.
The Claw of Beliar? Where is it now? Do you have it on you?
I don't have it anymore. I gave it to the water mages so they could dump it in the sea.
Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea what you gave away there? This weapon could have been of great service to us.
I think it was for the better this way.
The ways of the gods are unfathomable.
Jarkandar, or the Night of the Raven expansion, is a fun one. Balance-wise, the game expects you to visit it after Chapter 1 due to the level of the enemies around. It also has some nice Indiana Jones vibes, or Tomb Raider ones, coupled with a nostalgia blast from talking to all the old characters from the first game. Story-wise, it feels a bit odd that Beliar, the God of Darkness, antagonist of Innos, chose the Ore Baron Raven specifically to be his general and avatar. Raven gets very little screen time in Gothic 1, and although he comes off as a shrewd character, we really don't interact with him that much. I'd have honestly expected a better choice from the God of Darkness, such as Lee, who is in fact a former general, and a really competent one. But I guess calling your expansion Knight of the Lee wouldn't have the same ring to it. Once we're done, we head into our main mission, which is to enter the Valley of Mines and find out what happened to the Paladin expedition. I also want to point out the obvious irony that we spent the entirety of the first game trying to escape the prison colony, now we're gonna go back to it. Oh, and here's where the genius of the game really shines. See, if you're like most people my age and your back hurts, you'll have played Gothic 2 after Gothic 1, which means you have gotten a sense for the map in the first game and where everything is. Well, the developers had a stroke of genius, and once you enter the Valley of Mines, you're gonna encounter the same map as in Gothic 1. Sure, some things have changed, like how the landscape is burned, there's a million orcs everywhere, and the landscape itself is the same map as the original game. When I first played Gothic 2, I was moved to tears about the nostalgia of recognizing every place I stumbled across. From Cavalorn's old hut, from the castle in the old camp, or the bridge towards the new camp, was an indescribable feeling. And honestly, I don't know of any game that managed to replicate this feeling so far, or this very same game mechanic. We move down the same path we took in the first game, and we encounter a friendly scout. This guy lets us know that the paladins are camped inside the castle and are being besieged by a ring of orcs. Getting inside the castle is gonna be tough, unless you have magic. Magic in this game is beyond powerful, or overpowered even. And despite the game wanting to be a more hardcore version of the vanilla Gothic game, it throws a lot of resources in your path, specifically speed potions and scrolls. So I just pop a speed potion, equip a couple of fire rain scrolls I found, lure a couple of hundred orcs to my location, and instantly solve the siege problem. I'm mostly saddened by the fact that no NPC in the game comments how the siege is over and they can just go home. There's no more enemies around. Nobody wants to recognize our badassery in this game. We talk to the paladins, and their situation is already hopeless. Their genius commander took control of the castle and landed himself in the worst tactical position imaginable. He cannot defeat the orcs, nor can he contact the mining parties around the map to see how much magical ore they've dug. On top of that, their supplies are running out, they'll starve soon, morale is low, and people are deserting. I can actually understand why the kingdom is losing the war. Pity we can't take over the kingdom and make things right, so we console ourselves with the next best thing. We get the band back together. That's right, the buddies we made back in Gothic 1, aka Milton, Gorn, and Diego, are in the valley. Milton is already in the castle reading books, so meeting him is easy. Gorn the barbarian is lounging in the dungeons. Apparently he took a dozen paladins and a few broken teeth to rein him in. We buy his freedom and he'll owe us some beers in the future. Diego is chilling by the campfire making some stew. It's Diego that's the most interesting quest in the former prison, since he asks us to escort him to the pass. If we take him back to the spot where we first started the game in Gothic 1, we get a nostalgia dialogue on meeting him there for the first time. We can also clear the map in this chapter, say hi to the dragons we'll fight later. They are invulnerable for now, but we can help ourselves to a part of their horde just to spite them. We saunter off to 3 locations, collect the reports that the mining operation are a disaster, and tell the paladin commander that this expedition is a bust. Our reward is that we can go back to Lord Hagen and tell him to cough up the eye of Innos, since we have gained his trust. As we leave the Valley of Mines, a sinister character approaches us and gives us some voice acting with a creepy sound effect.
Weak little mageling, you will never be able to match the power of the Master.
Seems we have some new friends on the map and they're looking for us specifically. These are called the Seekers, and we'll be seeing more of them on the way. If we talk too much with them, we get cursed and cannot rest, nor can we pray at shrines. We return in glory to Lord Hagen, demand the Eye of Innos, and he agrees that we are worthy. He says the eye is kept at the monastery, so we go there to claim our prize. But plot twists abound. Seems the Eye of Innos has been stolen by nothing more than a novice, the very same novice that guarded the entrance to the monastery. In any other story, I'd say this was a bit ridiculous, how one of the most powerful artifacts in the kingdom is so poorly secured, but I want to point out one important detail. The game already establishes that the mages are filled with hubris and incompetence. In a previous chapter, we see how the mages simply put on display a magical hammer and a shield for anyone to take. The only guard the hammer has is a novice that can easily be overpowered or put to sleep via a spell scroll. It's not much of a leap of imagination to say that yes, a novice stole the Eye of Innos. I mean, we stole the sacred hammer back in chapter 1, so we really can't be judgmental now, can we? I really cannot fathom why the kingdom is losing the war. So we set out to track the novice, end up at the Circle of Stone Stonehenge type structure, where we see the eye being destroyed by the very same seekers that are hunting us. We recover the remains of the eye and plan our next move. And by plan our next move, I mean run back to Zardas and ask him to tell us what to do next. He says all is not lost. The eye can be repaired both spiritually and physically. We need a skilled blacksmith to repair it, so we get the physical part done. Spiritually, it needs a ritual that requires a water mage, a fire mage, and a black mage to do it. To physically repair the eye, we need the help of Bennett, the best blacksmith on the island. One small issue is that Bennett is now sentenced to death for the alleged murder of a paladin. He claims he's innocent, and since he's the only blacksmith that can repair the eye, we need to do some investigating. We find out the witness is the governor's scribe and he lied about the murder. He got paid off nicely, and the dialogue we used to get him to spill the beans is that we threatened him with torture. Are we the baddies again? Chapter 3, although being a more intermission chapter, made me realize one thing. Evil actually knows what it's doing in this game. Bear with me a second. We have the Seekers who are hunting us and have successfully destroyed the Eye of Innos. We have the Orcs who have pinned down the Paladins in the castle and shut down the mining operations. We have the Orcish Navy who have sunk the entirety of the kingdom's fleet to the bottom of the seas. And now we have dragons who have scorched the land. The Orcs are also smart enough to erect a defensive palisade and have supplies being ferried in by boat. We also have Seekers actively possessing people and manipulating the citizens of Khorinis to give false testimony to imprison the only person capable of restoring the Eye of Innos. We have Lizardmen, the henchmen of the dragons, actively distributing dragon eggs throughout the caves of the island. When they hatch, it's game over for everybody. We have Raven, named as the General of Beliar, and he successfully found the Claw of Beliar way before we get access to the Eye of Innos. We have layers and layers of plans laid out by the enemy, and most of them are bearing fruit. Meanwhile, the kingdom is in shambles. The mages are dicking around asking for donations for the Holy Church, as if it's Christmas Day. The paladins are spreading propaganda that everything is fine in the kingdom, and the war is about to be won, and the water mages are more interested in archaeology now than actually helping the war effort. Evil has its priorities straight. The good guys are idiots. Meanwhile, good is composed by a blind necromancer with dubious motives, more interested in interior design than anything, and his sidekick that is a compulsive kleptomaniac and his first correct instinct is to run away from the dragons. Why is our main character the chosen hero again? Why not Lee, or Hagen, or Gorn, or even Milton? They seem 1,000 times more competent than our main hero. Okay, rant over, we have the eye physically fixed, so we meet up with the 3 mages to repair the eye spiritually. Seems Vatras the water mage needs some swampweed to get the ritual going. Yeah, I've been to a few parties like that. It's amusing that Vatras can also repair the eye without the swampweed, and if you do fail to bring it, he just seems disappointed. The eye is restored, we get an armor upgrade, and we get a tutorial on how to use it. It seems that the eye can force dragons to tell the truth when used on them. I like this ability a lot since it treats the eye as more than just a magical buff artifact like most games, and is an integral part of the story. Pyrakar the High Mage says we need to find out the enemy's plans, and the eye is basically going to be our lie detector. Awesome! We enter chapter 4. We come back to the Valley of Mines and find some new tenants. It seems the presence of the dragons have drawn in some opportunistic mercenaries called dragon hunters. They talk the big talk, but are useless for our purposes. The only useful one is actually a hunter called Biff, who is a sword for hire. We're gonna make use of his services later on. Now at this point, the Valley of Mines has respawns of orcs and other big baddies. We clear them for some experience and visit the castle. Seems the boys are in rougher shape, almost ran out of food, and we even get quests to feed them. Why is the kingdom losing the war again? I do want to point out that at this point in the game, we have access to all the teleportation runes. We can teleport to all the major locations like the city or the monastery or even the castle. I think it would have been a very clever quest to introduce a potential supply line by using teleportation runes. Like, why couldn't a single person transport food to the castle 1 barrel at a time? All it would take is a few mana potions, right? Or just set up a rotation with a mage or a novice to do it. Anyway, we know where the dragons are, but it's nice that we can ask around for clues as to their strength and location. The first one we visit is the Swamp Dragon. This fight is all the more easier by having 2 mercenaries join in the fight. I think it's a nice touch that the first dragon we fight has 2 allies helping us, so we can learn the mechanics. Now to the dragon fight itself. I'll be blunt and say that dragon fights are quite disappointing. They basically have 2 mechanics and that's it. They have a long range fireball attack. If you go close range, they have a knockback fire breath. That's it. They also slowly regenerate health, but it's not much of a big deal. They can be handled in 100 different ways, but probably the funniest way is to just summon monsters to kill them. The voice acting for the dragons is also top notch, and we learned that they came here at the behest of a master. The next dragon we fight is a stone dragon, and we just humiliate him by summoning 20 goblin skeletons to nibble him to death. The third dragon is the Fire Dragon, and it gives us some exposition on how to fight the Dragon Master. Seems the Eye of Innos doesn't compel the dragons just to talk to us, but also reveals how to defeat the final boss. And the last dragon, aka the strongest, is the Ice Dragon. He's just a bit stronger than his brothers, but we also get to collect a dragon egg from him. And that's it! We killed the dragons and saved Khorinis. Or did we? Commander Goron asks us the same question. Is evil defeated forever? Nope. It seems we need to go on the lookout for the Dragon Master. Pacing-wise, Chapter 4 feels like it would be the third act of the game, when we are prepared, face countless challenges, got the magical thingy to defeat the dragons. The issue is that the game still has 2 more chapters, so the pacing feels a bit off. So we do what we've been doing the entire game. We go back to Zardoz to ask him for guidance. But as we exit the Valley of Mines, we enter Chapter 5 called Departure. This chapter is the final chapter that we'll spend on this island. As we reach Zardos's tower, our buddy Lester stops us and tells us Zardoz left us a letter. Seems all the info on what we need to do is contained in a book in the possession of the chief fire mage in the monastery. We visit the monastery and the clues point to visiting the basement. In the basement, we find a bunch of undead, some demons, and a library that apparently belonged to Zardoz, and no one, and I do mean no one in the monastery had any clue they had a bunch of demonic creatures and a secret lair in their basement. Why is the kingdom losing the war again? The library contains a few interesting things. It contains a nautical map to a place called the Halls of Irdorath, a journal that details Zardos's plans before the creation of the barrier, and a powerful potion and instructions to create a rune. Seems that Zardoz, among his writings, he was expecting to encounter a chosen one to fight Beliar, but this journal is at least 20 years old. So are we in a prophecy, I take it? I do like the fact that among the entries we find, Zardoz points out that Beliar, the god of darkness, knows what he's doing and will soon win the war. Is that a bit of a foreshadowing? With all this information in hand, we go back to Pyrokar and ask him for advice. Seems the Halls of Irdorath is actually an ancient temple dedicated to Beliar that disappeared many years ago. Amusingly enough, it's located on an island not far from Khorinis, but presumably nobody found it so far due to it being shrouded in mist or something like that. It's basically a base of operation for the orcs, and it explains why they were so successful in invading Khorinis thus far. The big baddie is located on this island, so we'll need a ship, a captain, and a crew to get there. The crew is pretty much already handled, since we got a solid group on our side. For the captain, I choose an old sea dog I found in the city, and the crew is composed of our buddies and trusted people. Now, before we leave, I have a chat with the fire mage that is working on a potion made out of dragon eggs. Coincidentally, we have such an egg from the ice dragon fight. We drink the potion, burp like a dragon, and we're stronger now. We also might grow scales at a later date, and our pupils might become vertical. We take one last look at Khorinis, say our farewells, and are treated to a nice departure cutscene. Thus, we enter the last chapter, the Halls of Irdorath. Compared to the Sleeper's Temple in Gothic 1, it's a pretty tame and linear dungeon. It's nice that depending on who we choose to be our crew, we can ask them for advice on what to do, and even take a companion with us to help in the coming fights. We fight through orcs, lizardmen, a small dragon, some undead, and we solve a few basic puzzles. There isn't much to say about the Halls of Irdorath. It's basically a hack-and-slash trek, and the only long puzzle in the game revolves on opening a bunch of doors and figuring out random combinations. Because randomness is the best puzzle design, said no gamer ever. I do want to point out that we get a recipe at one point where we craft a potion of uber strength made out of dragon eggs. Once we're done clearing all of the corridors of enemies, we've met by the big baddie himself. Wanna guess who it is? Is it Zardos himself? Is it Raven reincarnated? Is it our twin brother, a powerful mage or a sorcerer king? Nope, it's actually just an undead dragon. The dialogue he has actually self-references the fact that we have no name, just as our enemy has no name. Listen to this.
I bear no name, just as you bear no name. You not feel the bond that ties us together? Yes, you know who I am.
No, that cannot be. Zardos always said...
Zardos is weak and no threat to me. You alone are worthy of facing me. So it is written. The time has come to accept your fate.
The fight itself isn't much. It's just a dragon fight. The cutscene afterwards has its own plot twist. We defeat a dragon, give him a check it's really dead kick, but Zardos shows up. Before we deal the final blow, Zardos absorbs the soul of the dragon, subverting the God of Darkness's plans and becoming the avatar of Beliar with all the powers that entail. We make our way to the ship, say goodbye to all of our friends, pack our stuff, and we get an additional cutscene that sets up a sequel quite nicely. Yes, let's end it. And it's interesting that he has the armor from Gothic 1.
And the humans slew the beast, and it entered into Beliar's realm.
Zardos! What exactly happened in the Temple of Irdarath?
With the help of Innos, you have defeated the Avatar of Evil. And I have taken its power unto myself. Since I left the Circle of Fire, this alone has been my goal. What was denied to me in the Temple of the Sleeper has now finally come to pass. Beliar has chosen me.
So, you obey the God of Darkness now?
No, I do not obey Beliar any more than you obey Innos. Not even the gods know what fate has in store for us. And I am only just beginning to grasp what options are open to me. But one thing is certain, we shall meet again.
So that's the story. It's serviceable for the most part, although I feel there's a narrative dissonance between the idea of the Chosen One and being just a poor schmuck that is struggling to kill scavengers in the beginning. I would have much preferred if the game, or Zardos, or whomever mentioned something among the lines that we are not the avatar of Innos, but rather we became the avatar of Adanos, which ironically enough is exactly what one of the options is in Gothic 3. Now, without spoiling the ending of Gothic 3, or one of the potential ones at least, we can choose not to support the God of Light or the God of Darkness, but choose a path in the middle. Hell, I would have taken even the idea of being a placeholder avatar in lack of a better person available more to heart. Something along the lines of, yeah, we're kind of out of heroes and chosen ones at the moment, so you'll do. You're the next best thing. Here's a heavy branch, some farmer's clothes, good luck adventurer. That, I would feel, would be more in the spirit of Gothic. In any case, gameplay-wise, the game is solid. If you choose to play Knight of the Raven, or Gothic 2 Gold as it's called, be forewarned that it's a steep difficulty curve at the start. The game is supposed to be hard. The game is made in the same engine as the first game, and the combat mechanics are pretty much the same. Your attack animations are sluggish and clunky at the start, and this is by design. As you find fighting trainers and invest learning points into a specific attack style, you'll have more fluid and faster attack animations. Magic as well got an upgrade from Gothic 1. Spells are faster and do more damage to the point where magic actually trivializes the entire game by the end of chapter 2. The beginning of the game especially is well designed and satisfying. You start out struggling with simple mobs, and when you get your first decent weapon and armor, it's a game changer. There's no incremental constant gear drops like Borderlands, where you do 1.5% more damage with X weapon. Rather, you get these massive upgrades that allow you to fight stronger and stronger enemies. The game also throws you a lot of resources, so you can approach fights in a different way. Is the warg too powerful for you? Good that you looted some arrows and a bow in a chest earlier, so you can handle them if you climb up a tree. A few undead are a bit too much? Good thing you found those spell scrolls on the body of that unfortunate explorer in the cave nearby. Skill-wise, Gothic 2 introduces more skills than its predecessor. On top of the standard pickpocketing, lockpicking, and sneaking mechanics, you can now craft weapons, craft potions, and also learn an entirely new language in the game. This language is used to read stone tablets you pick up along the way that give permanent buffs to your character. The economy of the game is also well balanced and makes sense in the context of the story, so it's tough in the beginning, everything being sold at 15% of their value. This is explained in the game that inflation has skyrocketed due to the port town of Kyrinus not receiving any goods for a while now. On top of that, you have a farmers' rebellion, so little food is getting into the town. Coupled out the fact that the entire population of criminals of the kingdom just escaped from prison, and you get a recipe for a brutal economy. That being said, the game has money sinks you can use, so you never really feel like you have way too much gold. If you don't know what to do with the money, you can always donate gold at Altars of Innos for permanent buffs. There is also a hidden donation mechanic where you can once, every 24 in-game hours, donate 100 gold coins for a permanent increase by 3 hit points to your character's health. Also, they fixed the mechanics where you can beat up merchants and take their stuff. The game really feels difficult, but fair, and there's also multiple ways to handle a fight. Now, the soundtrack is grade A quality. It was composed by the same man that made the soundtrack for Gothic 1, aka Mr. Kai Rosenkrantz, which is also working on the Gothic 1 remake. The music has this dark, foreboding feel, but also has this heroic undertheme under it all that bespeaks of a hero fighting his way out of the pages of history to balance out what was upended. Sound design is also on point. For example, when exploring the world, you have this subtle world theme playing in the background that never really intrudes on the player experience. The exploration sound effects are stellar. You have birds chirping in the forest, leaves rustling. They give you the impression that there are small animals running in the underbrush. And from the creaking of rope bridges, the croaking of frogs, the buzzing of insects, or the lapping of waves on fishing boats, the sounds of Gothic is a masterclass on what a game designer should aspire to. Just have a listen to a few of these snippets. Now, what makes Gothic 2 such a perennial game? What is it that makes it a game worth playing today? Is it just the nostalgia or the fans experiencing a game 20 years ago that hasn't really been made since? Is it just a rose-tinted glass bear? Or is it something more, something subtle and hard to pinpoint that made Gothic 2 a gem that flew under the radar? What was the secret ingredient that made Gothic 2 so good? At the risk of sounding a bit cliché about it, I think the developers really cared and it showed. From having amazing moments like the ability to revisit the first map you played in Gothic 1, to having a nostalgia moment with Diego, the first character you met in the game, is one of the things that make the story so beautiful. It also keeps a pleasant consistency between the mechanics of the first game, keeping the best of them and removing the worst. The world reactivity is also a huge factor in selling a believable adventure. Characters react if you pull up a weapon haphazardly. They stop you if you enter their homes without permission. They remember if you help them or hinder them, and the game is more interested in offering you challenges rather than giving you everything up front, so you always feel like you earn everything you get. If you do decide to install Gothic 2, make sure you get a player patch, system pack, and if you want to spruce up the graphics, you can download the Direct 3D Renderer mod, which offers a ton of customization options on how to make the game look and feel to your heart's content. I'll put a link to them in the video description. Also, the modding community is amazing. 20 years out online and Gothic 2 has hundreds of mods you can find at martana.net. While waiting for the Gothic 1 remake, you can delight yourself in 100 different stories and mods. It's a true shame that Pyranha Bytes shut down, but the studio lost their souls when most of the team left after Gothic 3. As proof to that, we have the Risen and Elex series, which were interesting attempts at creating new worlds, but they all lacked that certain spark that the original Gothic 1 and 2 games had. Like a YouTube commenter once said, Pyranha Bytes managed to capture lightning in a bottle with Gothic 1 and Gothic 2, and they had no idea how they did it. Well, in my honest opinion, if you gather a good team that actually loves and believes in the game they're making, that's the main ingredient to a good story. Hell, Baldur's Gate 3 is the best example of that philosophy. People that actually care. On that note, I hope with all my heart the people at Alchemia Interactive will give Gothic 1 Remake the same love and care the initial developers did. And with that, if you haven't played Gothic 2 yet, give it a try. Go to Steam or GOG and buy it, or watch one of my playthroughs about it, or any other playthrough or presentation of the game. Yeah, the game is a bit janky. The pacing is something strange, and the combat can be brutal, but the game can be modded with a lot of quality of life choices to make it a pleasant experience. It's a game you only fall in love once, and it stays in your memory forever. Gothic 2 has its own identity, which, in my personal opinion, has been replicated only by the Gothic mod Gothic Chronicles of Mirtana Archolos, which coincidentally is going to be my next video game review. Thank you guys for watching, and remember, the most important story in the world is your own. Cheers guys and gals, and till next we meet.
Toss some of the gold overboard.
Get your hands off the gold.
Listen, it would be really better if we...
I don't want to hear any more about it.
I've heard the war with the orcs is going badly.
And?
We probably won't be able to spend all the gold anywhere.
The gold stays on board.
What good is the gold if we capsize in the tiniest storm?
But I don't see a storm.
Not yet.
Relax. Everything will turn out all right.